Okay, it looks like we are live. I'm going live a bit early today. I've got a guest. If you've read the description, you know that it is Matt PSA. He'll be along here shortly, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to get started, and once he comes along, we'll get him on here. So before he shows up, we'll just go through a few things. Um, one one thing. Try to be nice to him. That's my job, is to pick on him. The other thing is we'll just kind of go through the different things, get a few things out of the way before he shows up. It's been busy here at Tactical Pontoon. This week has been kind of nonstop. So I did manage to drop a video. Uh, Unfortunately, the video that I had planned for the Severe Precision Finger Blaster trigger, that video is gone. I don't have it anymore, and I don't have a fresh Safiri Finger Blaster trigger to finish that video. So that one's just going to be put on hold. I did drop the video on the OZ9 done by Sapper Tactical. If you haven't checked that video out, go watch it after the stream. Excellent. If you like something a little bit different, the OZ9, yeah, they're a little bit expensive, but it's a neat chassis. The problem I always had with them was the grip module. I always felt like they were built for the hands of aliens. That's one of the reasons why I never kept one around. But this time around, I decided to get one for the shop, and I sent that guy out to Sapper Tactical, and he not only knocked out an amazing Cerakote job, it's in the video, it fits a human hand now. So go check that video out after this. Great video. The next video I have planned this coming week is on the Boomerang 17L, done up by SRB Customs LLC in Houston. That video is coming up this week. Should be a good one. I'm going to have to set up the camera a little bit different just to fit that thing all the way on screen, but yet still see the detail. Should be a great video. That thing, it's more rifle than handgun at this point. In my eyes, I see it as what a modern day RoboCop would rock and roll with. So for anybody just joining in, I hope everybody's had a good Sunday, had a good weekend. I know around the country there have been ice storms and snow and that sort of thing. Tactical Pontoon is in Louisiana, and you'll probably hear it in the background. I have the air conditioner running. This is Louisiana. We got a brief respite from a little bit of cold, or actually from the heat and the humidity, but we are back with some heat and humidity. So to keep from glistening too bad, I see Matt is waiting to be brought in. I'll bring him in just a second. So anyways, okay, one last thing before we get going. Actually, I got two things, and I'll bring Matt in. I am wearing, and if you caught the show not last week but the week before, I was wearing a Glockness Monster. Well, I'm wearing it again. However, I'm wearing a different version. The one that Nordic Nevadan sent me right here. I got one of his stickers. Check him out. We'll be doing some stuff with him shortly when it comes to stickers. The original one he sent me was extra large, and even though I'm rather rotund right now, the extra large was too large, and my girlfriend stole it, said it was too soft for me anyways, and so I had him print me up one in large, and this thing is perfect size. Check him out. The last thing before I bring Matt on is when it comes to triggers, there are a lot of different versions out there, especially in the Glock hemisphere. And the reality is, when it comes to performance, value for money, customer service, live streams, and most of all, stickers, none of them, whether they're off the wall, off the shelf, basic custom units or full custom units. None of them have the stickers like Tactical Pontoon. I've got stickers like nobody else has stickers. So when you want the entire gamut of performance, value, customer service, live streams to listen to me yak, and stickers, you got to go Tactical Pontoon, because nobody comes close. I've said in the past, I've said in the past that not only do the Tactical Pontoon stickers add anywhere from 5 to 30 horsepower. Jesse, definitely 30 horsepower on your little Volt there, or whatever the other version is. I am told by car mechanics that if you put one of these on your Snap-on toolbox, one of them, even if it's just a little baby Tactical Pontoon Trigger Jedi, you will drop your Snap-on toolbox debt, or Snap-on debt, by $2,000. Just one sticker. Now, I can't say if they build up and you've got 6 stickers, you might actually pay off a ratchet, but that's a benefit to the Tactical Pontoon stickers. Win-win all the way around. So anyways, obviously I started early. Want to get that stuff out of the way before I brought Matt on, and it looks like he is ready. I'm going to add him. Matt.
James, how's it going?
I'm good. I got started a little bit early, just to kind of get my little spiel out of the way before I brought you on.
I saw that. I was wondering if I was late, but
you know me. I mean, how many times have I been late or not present when I was supposed to be? So no, you're good. You're good. You're officially early. We're 9 minutes early by my time.
Fine by me.
So good to have you here. Kind of introduce yourself. I'm sure we've got people from the Facebook groups, and maybe if you advertised at other places. So go ahead.
Well, my name is Matt. You probably have seen me in some of the PSA Facebook pages, most notably the Dagger groups. We've got a few of them now, but also a couple Rock groups, a couple Jackal groups, AR-15 groups, obviously. A lot of groups. But yeah, I've just got my start, with PSA relatively recently in some of these groups, and I think they just took a liking to me and the fact that I was pretty knowledgeable about the platform and was willing to help customers.
Sorry, I'm gonna stop you there for a moment. Before even, I think before the Dagger came out, you hit me up a couple times about different trigger questions. I didn't know who you were.
Right.
I mean, I get hit with questions all the time, and you would ask me rather intricate questions, and I would normally answer them in pretty well. But then once I saw that there was truly a market for the Dagger, and I kind of stayed away from the Dagger for a little while. I was busy, but finally when I got into the Dagger groups, you were all over the place.
Right.
And everybody knew Matt or Joe Stone, but that's another story. And yeah, maybe we'll talk about that. But the one thing I can say about the Dagger groups is, compared to other Glock groups that I'm a part of, you guys, the Dagger groups are kind of a family. Like, I see more interactions and people actually helping each other versus the other Glock groups where everybody, somebody posts a picture and they get roasted. Or
yeah, we tried really hard to keep a lot of the negativity out of the groups. There's no reason for that. Everybody, might need a helping hand or some information at some point. There's no need to be rude or condescending. So when we see that and try and put a stop to it, it's not needed. Doesn't help.
Yeah. Like I said, you guys, I mean, I don't know how many moderators or admins there are on the Dagger groups, but you guys, and I know you're probably one of the main parts of it, you keep it pretty clean. It's a good group, and I get more interaction from one of those groups that might have 3,000 or 4,000. I think you guys, would you guys just go up and over? I saw a post just a minute ago. You went up another 1,000 people on one of the
Yeah,
groups.
the smaller Dagger enthusiast group, we just did like another 1,000 members in 9 days. I think we started trending for some reason. Facebook started recommending the group, but the other group was got like 5 or 6 thousand, I think, members. I've
Mm-hmm.
lost track, honestly. We go through waves of new members. It's just kind of crazy.
Depends on if the algorithm likes you.
Right, exactly.
But for the size of those groups, the amount of interactions I actually see on them versus Glock Society, which is another one, they've got 16, 17,000 or somewhere around in there, or even Glock Owners Group that's got like 30,000.
And nobody posts.
Nobody posts. That is correct. Whereas the Dagger Group, you guys are active. It kind of reminds me of when P80s were more of a thing.
Right.
You saw a lot more posts. I mean, granted, you guys aren't drilling holes in the wrong place and gluing them back together.
I don't know. We've got some members that do some pretty strange things, but for the most part, I mean, it's just really active. I think the platform has really taken off. The Dagger line is just going to continue to grow. We've got a lot of new products coming in the next year or so, and Lord knows what the future holds after that. I mean, it's about to explode.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, you talk about things that are going on. The micro dagger, I don't know how much you can say about it, and that's fine. But obviously, that is the one that I see everybody asking about. And
you're trying to get me in trouble, James.
I'm not trying to get you in trouble. You can say I don't have any new information, and I'll completely understand that.
Unfortunately, it's kind of gotten to the point in some of these groups where it's asked about every single day for the most part, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that announcements had been made previously that indicated certain time frames might come to pass, and those came and went, and for whatever reason the product's still not here. But right now I think we're to the point where it's been said publicly that we're going to see the micro dagger slides and the magazines come before the complete firearm. So we're close on the slides and the magazines, but I think we're looking towards summer-ish for the complete pistol or the frames themselves, but we should see the slides and the magazine before that.
And I can imagine, it's ever since 2020, the entire supply chain from raw materials to finished components has been just plain insane, more insane than in normal times. So for these type of delays, I mean, I completely understand that. Knowing what I do know about PSA and their facilities, I mean, they can machine just about anything. But I would imagine it's the polymer side of the house, like you said, the frame being coming on later, that being one of the components that might be, maybe you guys aren't as in depth in that field versus the machining part. Because I mean, Palmetto State Armory has been building their own stuff for a long time on the machining end, the metal end, whether it's aluminum, stainless, and that sort of thing. So that would be my guess as to why it's going to be a little bit of a delay.
It might play into it. I don't know the particulars about what would make the frame be slightly more delayed than the slide or the magazine. I would imagine we spent a lot more R&D time and engineering time on the magazine specifically, because you got to remember our magazine is not going to require the use of an aftermarket mag catch, in the micro, or you got to remember our mags will be, compatible in the 43X, the 48, and you'll be able to use your stock mag catch in that as well. So it's a much different design. We showed some photos and stuff at SHOT Show, some video. I think it's going to be received really, really well. But got to get it perfect, before we can bring it out.
The magazine, because I didn't follow a lot on SHOT Show. Is the magazine a stainless magazine, or is it a polymer magazine?
It's actually a hybrid. So that it's a metal mag for the most part, but the front portion is kind of over molded, I guess, with
Okay.
polymer.
Okay.
And so the section that of the magazine that interacts with the mag catch itself is polymer, which negates the necessity of an aftermarket mag catch. So you won't have to worry about our mags, getting chewed up, or vice versa with the mag catch and a steel mag. So it's a different design, and I think we went a different way with it. But I'm so excited for it. I think it's going to be a game changer.
I could see that, and like you said, people don't think about they don't think about the engineering that goes into a magazine until it fails on them.
Right.
And seeing the other aftermarket magazine, I can't remember it off the top of my head, that for the 43X, it's hit or miss. I've seen people say the shield mag.
Right.
People praise it, and then on the other half, they're not so much. For myself, I like the factory Glock magazine if I was going to use one in that capacity. But if it was a range toy, I would go with the shield. But like I said, the type of engineering that goes into a magazine just to make sure that it feeds each and every time, there's a lot into it. That's why I'd never recommend Pro Mag for anything, even though
Right.
I've got a good buddy that swears by their AR-15 magazines, but he's my friend, so I can't account for his taste.
I kind of look at it as we get probably one good chance at nailing it. The last thing you want to do is drop an inferior product and have the market write it off, and I would much rather see the company take the time and get it right. And when it's released, and I'm sure it's just going to take over. It's going to be insane.
I honestly thought that that's what was going to happen to the CR920 when Shadow Systems released that, and the initial batch was just everybody was having trouble left and right.
Right.
They seem to have people are buying them. There are, and I've replaced a lot of triggers on them because they literally, that hybrid trigger that the CR920 has is the absolute worst out of the box trigger out of any Glock based platform out there. It is absolutely the worst. Why they went that way? Maybe there's patent reasons or whatever, but that is terrible. But other than that, the gun seems to, now that they've kind of got a second generation out, the CR920 seems to have the following still there. Right. So but at the same time, if PSA can release a Dagger Micro is it micro or mini?
Micro.
It's micro. If they can drop that micro for the right price right out of the box and it runs with the high capacity magazine, they're going to win. And right. I mean, looking at the Dagger, the type of sales I can only imagine on the Dagger are probably tremendous. So
it's I wouldn't even begin to know the specifics about that, but I think it's just taken the industry by storm. I don't think anybody really expected it to be what it is, but it's just taken off. I mean, the affordability, the price point that we start at, what we offer, for that price point, I think it's incredible.
Now, you gotta take this word up, and you need to let them know they got to get rid of those roll pins. Got to get rid of the roll pins, because for the love of God, no, the roll pins. I know why. I have a good idea of why they did it. It makes sense from that aspect, because they really don't want anybody opening up a Dagger and replacing parts. Completely understand that.
Yeah.
So having a roll pin that holds everything together, makes complete sense.
The only thing I can say about that is, you said you didn't pay attention a whole lot to what was at SHOT Show, but we did show off the full size long dagger at SHOT Show, which is like a true 17 equivalent dagger. And there were a few people that pointed out in some of those posts and videos that there were not any roll pins in that full size long. So, you know, maybe you never know.
Yeah. I can hope. That is probably the one reason why currently I have only the one dagger, which right now is actually not in the shop. As you know, it's been gone for a little while. Is really the roll pins. The ergonomics, excellent. Truly, it surprised me when I picked up a dagger frame initially. Having come from Nomad factory frames, never been a huge fan of the P80 frame for myself. It's
too square,
definitely. And I even came from the times of the original P80s with the massive blocky, just nightmares from those, but never could quite get into the P80s from an ergonomic standpoint. Obviously Nomad, excellent frame, but the dagger surprised the crap out of me. It really did. They've created a nice frame.
Yeah, the ergonomics are a huge part of what drew me to the platform in the first place. Also the price point. My first introduction was just with a stripped dagger frame. We were initially selling the frames without a trigger group. I think for like $60 or something, if I'm not mistaken. They don't sell them that way anymore. But you know, still at $99 for a complete frame. I mean, it's a tremendous value, and the ergonomics are great. I mean, most people seem to have complaints about the trigger. You and I are both kind of trigger snobs. I don't mind the shoe as much as a lot of people do. I've actually been able to do some really cool things with the shoe itself. But I don't like the rolling brake, you know, that the connector style that the dagger ships with. So I don't use that in a lot of my builds. But I mean, a lot of people we see when they're trying to build their daggers, they drop in a Ghost or a Zev connector, and you and I are both like, why did you bother? It's the same connector. You know?
And that's one of the reasons why I have the video that where I zoomed up in on it and showed the geometry is the exact same as a Ghost, as some of the Zevs, as you know, a lot of your 3.5 connectors out there. It's the same geometry. There might be a little bit of metallurgy difference that might change the snap of the reset, but not enough that most people are going to notice.
I'm not even aware of any other manufacturers that ship their guns or their frames with a connector of that angle. Are you?
The only thing would be the Zev OZ9. It comes with their Pro connector, which is basically the same geometry. I have a protractor that when I did my connector video, my initial connector video several years ago, I got down into the nitty gritty, and there's slight differences. We're talking degrees. But it's not enough to actually make a difference. Now you've got some of your other connectors on the market, your Ghost Edge, which has a completely different design.
Right.
And obviously it changes a lot of things. One of my favorites. Then there are a couple, like your Lone Wolf. Lone Wolf's got some funky designs. The one needs to eat a sandwich. It's got the middle cut out of it. Never really been a big fan of that one, but definitely, like you said, being able to pick one of those frames up for like $99, or I mean, some of the other sales that they have are just insane. It definitely brings some of the highest value to the market when it comes to getting into the Glock platform. And I'm seeing more people coming into the Glock platform. than there was for a while there. When the P80 stuff started to go down because of all of the different rulings and whatnot, there was kind of a lull in people buying into the Glock system. The Dagger, you're seeing brand new people. It's pretty interesting.
Right, and I think it's there's a whole gambit of people. I mean, obviously we get people who came from the P80 realm, came from stock 19s, just building whatever they could. But I think we also get a lot of people where this is their first gun.
Yeah.
Just from this point, from a value perspective, they said, hey, I can afford this. I'm interested. Let me get into the market. And I think we just hit the ball with it, and we're just running with it. I mean, it works. We don't get a lot of complaints. That's what I've been doing the past few weeks now is working the customer service side of things for PSA. So it's pretty awesome, honestly. It really can't get any better. I can't wait to see all the crazy things that they've got in store, for the future. It's going to be pretty exciting.
Now, you said the customer service aspect, and if you can't say anything, that's fine. But what would you say is the number one thing? And I being on the groups, I see a lot of people that have little gripes here and there, little things. What would you say customer service wise, the type of questions you have to answer more than anything else? Just out of curiosity.
I don't see a ton of questions. Most of the people that would contact me or anyone working alongside me might have an issue or think they have an issue. But in terms of just general complaints, and I think this comes across in the group as well, a lot of people believe that the magazine release is very stiff. I don't personally feel that way. I don't know if it's an ergonomics thing or strength of the thumb thing.
You would think a keyboard warrior would have some good thumbs. So
right. I don't know, but I do see that a lot. And truthfully, there's not a really great suggestion. I see a lot of people post in the group about, they use an aftermarket mag catch and they believe that help. I think if anything, it's more just maybe providing slightly different ergonomics, a different purchase on the mag catch itself.
Mental justification.
Right.
It's like in the car world, we call it the butt dyno. You
right.
throw something on that actually doesn't do anything, and they'll swear by it just so that you can kind of justify your purchase.
Exactly. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. People customize their stuff. I don't think it affects safety or anything like that. As long as they think it helps, and that's all that matters. Ultimately, there isn't too much we can do from a customer service side of things. I mean, I can't really ask people to work on their thumb strength or anything of that nature.
You do have to be careful what you say, especially working with the company directly.
Right.
Whereas somebody could on social media could be like, hey, why don't you do some thumb wrestling or something? Don't be a weakling. But obviously, and I deal with this on my own side of things when it comes to troubleshooting or dealing with customer service. Is you do have to be nice. You do have to be nice and be understanding. And like you said, a lot of times it's not genuine issues as it is just, it might be something that just needs troubleshot, something that they didn't think of. I mean, nobody reads manuals. Nobody takes the time to fully understand, especially if it's one of their new toys, if you will.
Right. Or they're parts swapping and not realizing how certain parts might interact with others. The triggers are a big part of that. I have countless people who have tried to drop in some kind of trigger system and started having all kinds of issues. And the first thing I say is put the stock trigger back in. Let's go from there. Let's take one thing at a time. Another thing that comes up often in the groups is, people who are new to mounting red dots on pistols. especially, the Dagger or, other pistols of that kind. If you're not careful with that right mounting screw, it can be just a hair too long and it will pinch that extractor plunger. And you can have feeding and extraction issues. I just had a case today. Customer said he just got the gun, ran a couple hundred rounds through without issue, put his red dot on, and now it won't feed, it won't extract. Well, I mean, we got to remove that red dot, and we'll shorten that screw a little bit, and you can mount it back up, and you should be good to go.
Mounting screws, and you've probably heard me complain about this a lot when it comes to optics, is mounting screws. All your different slides, all your different manufacturers have different thread pitches. I have a whole multiple different lengths, threads.
Right.
Just yeah, exactly.
A couple of these sitting around. It's nuts.
And it actually used to be worse, because until about 2018, probably around 2018, there was not a standardized footprint as much as there is now. The RMR was kind of the standard, if you will, but it wasn't what everybody was cutting. You had your Leopold, your Dr. cuts, they were a lot more, all of your red dots hadn't quite standardized. There's still variations to the RMR cut.
Right.
Boy, it was even worse. It's better now, but I think, and I'm pushing, I got a guy that I'll be bringing on, used to be with Swamp Fox.
Mike.
Yes. I've been dealing with him for a long time. And I recently, the other night, I sent him a message out of nowhere. I said, "Hey, make them mount like the Acro or the Kraken. Yeah. Basically kind of like a Picatinny style mounting. Let's get rid of these screws. Just do something that clamps on." So tired of screws when it comes to.
Did you see his post the other day, going from the Swamp Fox to the Holosun, swapping out his EDC?
Yes.
I was surprised.
Well, and it's funny because before the Justice ever released, I saw pictures of it, and he had it. He ran that thing for, I would say, almost a year before they ever came out in production. So he actually did torture testing of that thing, and to see him swap that out to a Holosun just blew my mind. Now, granted, he's not with Swamp Fox anymore,
right?
And he's actually working with another company. They're going to be coming out with their own line of optics, and I foresee. Why doesn't your screen say? Somebody says, why doesn't Matt's screen say Dagger Jedi? I could see that.
I'm not a Jedi yet, just a Padawan, right?
Just a little Padawan. Well, trigger Padawan. You could be you're actually if anybody, the Dagger Jedi is obviously Joe Stone. He is.
You can't say his name.
Yeah. I don't really see him very much.
Like Beetlejuice, you say it too many times and he'll come back.
That's true. Around. I got one more time. I'll keep. I won't say it again. I don't know where I was at, but Swamp Fox, Mike, he's with another company, and I foresee, I don't know about Palmetto, but they're probably looking at this, but optics. I see a lot of companies coming out with their own optics. I think that's a relatively lucrative field that's going to get quite busy. I mean, there are more options now than there ever was.
Right. I think almost all of these companies are getting their optics from overseas. Making some changes here and there, rebranding kind of thing. I think Swamp Fox was doing that as well, but more competition can't hurt. I've got 3 or 4 Sentinels and Liberties on a bunch of the pistols, and they run. I don't have any issues with them. I'm not sure that I would carry with the Swamp Fox, but that's just me personally. I would go with either the Trijicon RMR or a Holosun, but we all have our preferences.
Oh yeah. Honestly, myself, I'm kind of on most of my carries because I have a variety that I run through. Is Iron sights. I still for the most part run iron sights. With when it comes to the range, I'll do the red dot thing. But maybe I just have kind of stuck with iron sights just for my own, probably because I'm tired of finding screws. That's probably what I'm going to go with. And having, everybody asks, well, what do you use to put your screws in with? I'm Vibratite. That's been my thing.
All the way,
people trying to use red Loctite
all over the place.
stuff. Mine. I actually need to get another bottle. Mine hardened on its own. I broke the cap because it locked itself, and I broke the cap, and then it dried. So I need to get new. But yes, I will have Mike on. We're going to talk red dots. Maybe we'll get some insight onto the new ones coming out, and I can grill him about the screws changing over to an acro type mounting, and give him hell for running a Hollison. Still blows me away. And then he switched to a SIG. He was running. Yeah, I know.
He was running 26 for a long time.
He did. And I built his trigger years ago. I ran into him. I don't know if he's still on YouTube, but there's a guy, the Daily Shooter. He was in California. I think he moved to like Nevada or something, but he ran the original Swamp Fox Liberator, and I had built a trigger for him. And after seeing the video, Mike had gotten a hold of me. We got to talking, and I built him a trigger. We did some trading. I ended up getting one of the original Liberators. Kind of blocky, kind of boxy, but it was their original. But the cool thing about it at the time was, unlike some of your other lower, your budget optics, because I had dealt with, I can't remember they've another budget optic, but they had some weird pattern. I ended up having one slide cut for it, and it was weird. But anyways, the Liberator was an RMR cut. It fit on there. Things were good. That's how Mike and I pretty much started dealing with one another. So I've kind of been around him for quite a while. So seeing him leave Swamp Fox was a big thing. Guess he's with JSD. Everybody knows them from the P80 world.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that they're still kicking. So many of the companies have gone down after everything P80 related, after the dust settled. Even a lot of manufacturing companies that were milling slides and parts and accessories are really struggling.
Yes, the market, from what I can see, the market for your high end Glock parts, like your slides, especially slides. I mean, I've seen the market drop in price just because at the time, for a long time, people were building P80s for fun. They were building competition guns or something for their mantle place that never got shot. So they would buy the high end slides and whatnot. And then as that market, 2020 was kind of what I saw as the peak, because I sold a lot of P80 and built a lot of P80 triggers. As 2021 hit, it was more the builds were cheap. Everybody was buying the cheapest rock slides they could or whatnot, and just building a bunch of them. And just, I watched the market fall. Now, when I noticed the Dagger really coming online, people were spending a little bit.
Those Dagger slides.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I did a video on one of those. Really nice slide for the money. Right. The one thing, and I want to ask you this, when it comes to the opting mounting on the RMR cuts, I noticed when I dropped a different manufacturer slide plate on there that there was extra room. I do like the fact that it does have the recoil lugs, which you don't see on enough slides. Which mounting has because there was room. It had a little bit of wiggle room, I imagine, to fit as many optics as possible. What optics are bigger than others? Just to fit. I mean, you played with.
I wish I was an expert. I don't go around, miking up the different, RMR footprint optics, but I do have a buddy, Nate at Nameless Armament. LLC, who does a lot of those match fit optic cuts,
Yeah.
and he's always preaching about the tolerance stack from all of the manufacturers. You know, Trijicon, Holosun. He makes his optic cuts so tight that you know, you send him an optic, and if that one died and you had to have it replaced, there's a really good chance that that replacement's not going to fit, just because the tolerances on, you know, from some of these manufacturers are just, they're just, you know,
Yeah,
you
they're
got
loose.
a wide range, unfortunately.
Mhm.
You know, so I'm sure there was some engineering decisions that went into the RMR optic cut, you know, footprint on the Dagger slides as well.
Yeah. I
Did,
would
did you
imagine
have
to
a
fit.
did you have a cover plate for the Dagger, or were you using an
Yeah,
after?
it came with a cover plate, but just kind of as a quick reference, because I dropped a Liberty on it, and I noticed that there was about 16th of an inch, give or take, on the back side that
Right.
there was room. So just out of curiosity, because I was going to do a video on it, I threw on. I had a cover plate, and I got crap all the way around here, from I think Boogeyman Customs, and there was an RMR plate, just cover plate, to kind of see if it was that footprint was big, and it was a little bit big.
Right.
The cover plate from Boogeyman had some room. Have an agency cover plate I threw on there just to give a kind of an idea of, which is good. I mean, you at that point you're going to be able to drop on just about any optic with the RMR footprint without
Right.
running into issue.
And a lot of adapter plates as well. I mean,
Oh
we,
yeah.
we talk about the tolerances on, you know, the optics themselves, but not everybody wants to run, you know, an RMR footprint optic. So,
Mhm.
you know, you give them the room to run pretty much any adapter plate you can think of, to go to whatever footprint you're interested in. So I'm sure there was probably some thought that went into that as well.
Yeah. Like I said, it makes it simpler, and the fact that it does have the lugs up front, those recoil lugs, I mean, that alone is going to help keep everything mounted where it needs to
Right.
be.
Of all the complaints or different types of complaints I've seen,
Mhm.
you know, I've not yet seen an instance where an optic sheared off a Dagger slide or anything like that. So we've had instances where people didn't use the correct screws and were relying on like a thread or one and a half threads to
Yeah.
properly secure an optic, but that's a much different experience than screws shearing off,
Yeah.
from the force of, you know, the slide reciprocating.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was just something I had noticed, and I'm more of a trigger guy, obviously. But I've only played with a few different optics, and mostly Swamp Fox, just because I dealt a lot with Swamp Fox, probably less. I also noticed that customer service wise, I'm hearing that there's a lot when it comes to Swamp Fox. It's not as good as it used to be. Mike was on point. He definitely was taking care of a lot of people. So I probably won't be dealing with Swamp Fox as much. It's sad to see, because I enjoyed them. The price was right. Customer service was good. I actually had a couple of the old Liberators that gave me issue, and they were able to get me straight through taken care of. So sad to see Mike out of there, but hopefully his new venture with JSD is going good. I'll have him on here. But as for customer service, I like I would hate to be a P80 customer service rep. And I have a guy that I will be bringing on who did some of that during their heyday.
I can't
And
imagine.
I actually sent him one guy who had bought a trigger for me. He bought a full excommunicado. He spent a good deal of money on it, obviously. And when he sent me pictures after he had installed, and he had an issue, it just needed a slight cruciform adjustment. And he sends me a picture. It's rocking a rock slide. It's rocking a rock slide. And I looked at the holes that he had drilled.
Look like
This
a
is
beaver shoot 'em.
oh my God. It wasn't figure eight. It was like there was three places. I mean, it was bad. And now he happened to be a friend of one of my friends out in Alabama. The guy works on helicopters. That's what's sad. That was sad. Or he flies helicopters. I think he flies helicopters. So that makes sense. He can't drill a hole straight. So I said, well, one, before we continue, I'm going to send these pictures to my guy at P80 and let's get you taken care of on the frame side, because don't shoot that thing. Right. Yeah, don't shoot that thing. That's probably another reason why you've got an issue. Right. But he sent me pictures and horror stories of just people could not drill. I mean, they're not that hard. They're truly not that hard.
Have you seen some of the new ones though?
I have seen the new ones, the new 76.
Butchering them. I mean, I haven't tried one. I honestly don't have any interest in it anymore, but people just are struggling.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's going to, you know, what kind of impact that's going to have on performance or functionality, but they look rough.
Well, yeah. I mean, they couldn't hardly, and I don't take this against anybody. It just is. Some people shouldn't be doing it because they couldn't drill a hole. They were having trouble drilling holes and just milling off the little bit of plastic that you had to on the originals. These new ones, where the trigger block housing hole is got that grid in there, is, I feel sorry for the people that just don't have the capabilities to
you need some experience with a Dremel for sure to be able to knock something like that out. You can't just try and go at it with the razor blade or a screwdriver. I've seen some crazy things, but
yes, you do need a Dremel and you need a steady hand. I come from a background of structure work on aircraft, so they never gave me too much issue. But I'm also kind of lazy. So another reason why the P80 never really did anything for me was I drilled enough holes at work at the time. I didn't want to come home and have to drill holes in my frame. So laziness plays a part into it. But seeing those new housings where they have that new plastic web, even the ones that are done right, I've seen people that do them that work.
They still look rough.
They look very rough. As for the future, I'm going to be curious. I've seen, you know, P80 has done deals with what's the name of that? Well, they're basically, they're only shipping out to a certain amount of suppliers. The one, I can't remember the name of it, Moriarty or something, whatever. Anyways, that's slowing things down. And like you said, a lot of the companies that got big on it, JSD, F&F Firearms, some of your others, they're not doing the P80 thing anymore.
Right.
There's really not the same amount of money in it, because to be honest, there was a lot of money in P80s. There was a ton of money in P80s. They didn't spend a lot of money on those frames.
Yeah, I don't know what their dealer cost was, but I'm sure that even when they would blow them out on sale, they were doing pretty good. But also, I think it was the markup on, you know, the parts and accessories and the slides, you know, having like more of a one-stop shop to get all of that kind of stuff. I'm sure kept a lot of these companies going, but not anymore.
No. And the peak in like 2020, you had aftermarket companies that were producing lower parts kits that were decent. Before 2020, before like 2019 and earlier, the only aftermarket kits parts wise that were available trigger wise was like Lone Wolf, and you never wanted to use a Lone Wolf parts kit in a P80. They just did not work without some tuning and work. So that's why you used to be able to see frames, Glock frames for cheap that they had stripped. You had a lot of companies that were stripping factory Glocks and making money off of selling the frame for like, I used to be able to get those frames for like $25,
right,
for shop builds. And then they would sell the parts kits for $60-$70 and all the slides and that sort of thing. And then as the aftermarket came in, you know, the prices dropped, you couldn't get the frames. And then of course now we've got all the different regulations on them, and it's just, I don't think the future is great for it, honestly, when it comes to P80.
And not with the affordability of some of these aftermarket frames like the Dagger. I mean, I think there's always going to be diehards that just, want to have the ability to manufacture the frames themselves, screw the government kind of thing. But, I started with all of that. I did a dozen P80 builds. I did all of the other aftermarket unserialized 80% frames, the Strike Industries, the GST 9 Mod 1, the Freedom Wolf. I did them all. I got to the point where I ran out of the 80% builds to do, and I started looking for all the serialized frames, the aftermarket serialized frames. I did, which ones did I do? I know I did the Nomad. I just did so many, and eventually I ended up, looking into the Dagger, and for the price, I was like, I can't not try it, and I just kind of jumped head first, and coming from that background with helping people in the polymer community with all of their issues and trigger issues and all that stuff, I think it just worked out really well in the Dagger groups, and so everyone started coming to me with their issues anyway. So.
And I know I can only imagine before you were with PSA, the amount of questions that you would field every day without getting paid for it. Just because I personally get a ton of questions, whether it's full Glock, issues with a full gun or just trigger issues. It can be hard to walk away from your phone to do anything with your life, because your phone, you might come back to your phone, you have 5-10 messages about something relatively easy, and then trying to explain it to somebody who doesn't have the mechanical knowledge of what you're trying to explain or the terminology. That can be fun. That can be a lot of fun.
It's a struggle for sure. You kind of have to just enjoy helping people. I go through phases in life, with different interests. I wasn't always interested in guns. Even when I was interested in guns, I started out with the SIG 365. I was just as crazy with that as I was with the Dagger or any other, build type, to be honest with you. I had like 10 365 builds at one point. I was a moderator in like a 365 group that had like 40,000 members at the time. I just went nuts with it, but I just lost interest, really just fell off a cliff with it. Got to the point where I sold just about everything. Still have one or two, I think. Got a 43X and realized how much more crazy that market and the aftermarket can be, and just started running with it, and just never looked back. But kind of stuck in this Dagger realm right now with everything that PSA's got going on. I try and branch out into some other stuff. What did I get just recently? Oh, the ZRO Delta, the one. They finally shipped. They finally shipped this. It was on pre-order for like a year. So I try and stay interested in some other stuff, but really what interests me in some of these frames is that I can run a Dagger slide on it. So
really?
Yeah. So it's like I'm still a little diversified, but always try and keep it Dagger related in some way.
Everybody asks me, I get asked a ton, well, when are you going to build a trigger for this? When are you going to build a trigger for that? When are you going to build a trigger for this? When are you going to, and some of them, like for example, this P3 or P10C, I had a lot of interest in those originally, but the market never really took off. And as a one-man show, I only have so much time. And if I build 3 of those triggers in a year, it doesn't really justify my time. Smith & Wesson, I used to get a lot of interest in those, not so much anymore. I used to be interested in a lot more, collecting, if you will, different frames, different guns from different manufacturers. And then as time went on, I just found myself, there was so much I could do with the Glock platform that I kind of got stuck kind of like you said, in that realm. And then next thing I knew, I was building triggers, and it just got to the point where I didn't really have time to kind of branch out. I got the HK VP9 that I built a trigger for, and I still sell a decent amount of those. You would be surprised. You wouldn't think that gun has a big market, but it's kept me pretty busy. But I'm kind of stuck in the Glock market. I enjoy it. If I change into something else or branch out, it's probably going to be like 2011s, whether it's staccato, or maybe help fix these prodigies.
That's a whole nother animal.
Yes.
I know some of the triggers on those guns are just absolutely insane.
Mm.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it takes to put an awesome system together in one of those. But I'm still learning so much. I've learned a lot from you just in the last year or two. I think I've come a long way. I have a rather unique take on these trigger systems that we build, and it's definitely a little more unusual than most people do. But
Oh, you do. You've taken, like I said, when we first started talking, like I said, before I got into the Dagger thing, you had hit me up a couple different times. You had some good questions. And especially in the earlier days, I was a lot busier with, I had a full-time career and I did the triggers on the side. So I know there were times I left you on red and didn't get back to you. But you were always very good about not calling me out on it. But
people have a life. I realize it.
And the other thing was, you were asking some questions that I didn't know your skill level, because you run into
stealing your secrets, James.
Yeah. Well, I run into people that they initially sound like they have a higher skill level than they actually do. Maybe they've watched too many of my videos or videos from other places, and they'll ask questions that on the surface seem legitimate. And then when I bring out an answer to them, it's over their head, and they get themselves into trouble.
Right.
And then don't know how to get themselves out of trouble. And then it's my fault. It happens. And I've had customers, unfortunately, that will buy into like a Leonidas system, which is not a cheap system and is not for a beginner per se. And they'll get into it and they'll start tinkering with it, and they should never have opened it up. If they had just dropped it in, for the most part, it would have ran. But then they start tinkering with it, and then it gets returned to me, where now not only is it possibly destroyed, I'm out that money and the time for troubleshooting, then to have it all returned. And it you got to be careful. I'm careful with the type of questions that I answer. So if I left you on red sometimes, but nowadays I've learned some stuff from you, and you do things different than I do when it comes to your trigger tuning. We have a difference in opinion on how we do it. But I like seeing the things that you do. It's really cool for me to see, because I don't know everything. I don't claim to know everything, and I'm still learning. Even though I've been doing this for as long as I have, there's still things that come up that I'm like, where did that come from? How is this happening? Right. And it could be a tolerance
every
thing.
Day. Honestly, it's always something. But nobody, and I think for good reason, nobody is foolish enough to do the trigger systems the way that I do, because I think it just makes things so much more difficult. It complicates so many more aspects of the system. It's entirely unnecessary. It's just I get in my head about what I prefer and how I like it, and I just can't stop. So they're all this way now, and it's just kind of become a challenge. Sometimes I get into one and I just can't figure it out, and I destroy part after part after part trying to make it work, and then I'll finally get it, and it's like, yes,
graveyard of parts.
Yep.
Graveyard of factory parts. I've got a graveyard of aftermarket trigger shoes. My goodness. when I first started, my first trigger design was I actually moved the fulcrum point of the trigger bar, and in the trigger shoe itself. So I would have to drill the trigger shoe and drill the trigger bar, cut the end off the trigger bar, and I would move everything. What it did was it made the trigger lighter. You had more leverage on the trigger. The problem is when it comes to drilling it, and I knew this from my background in aviation with close tolerance holes, you have to then put the pin back in the trigger and it has to hold, and not slip out. So you had to do a close tolerance drill. You had to make sure that the measurements were correct when how much you removed and changed. Well, I was early enough in the whole deal that I didn't understand all of the different tolerances of different frame, even the different frames, let alone slides and that sort of thing. So my initial run of triggers, I think out of 10, I think I replaced 8 of them because the tolerances were off, and it was an all-night deal. Because like I said, at the time, and back then I was actual mechanic out of my box, so I was tired, and it would take my entire weekend to knock out like 3 or 4 triggers, and then to have them all replaced was it was a nightmare. I almost quit back then, but I learned of all of the different tolerances of even just frame to frame, generation, P80. You learn a lot in a very short period of time by failing.
Right. I don't know how you do it, honestly. I get hit up a lot. People are asking, hey, can you build me this? Can you do this with my trigger? And they see a video that I post in the groups and they're like, help me out, I'll send you the stuff, how much do you want? And I'm like, dude, I gotta sleep at night. I have confidence in what I'm doing, and I wouldn't hesitate to carry any of the triggers that I build, especially now recently.
Yeah.
Probably not in the beginning, but I just the thought of selling somebody a trigger that I build, I don't know. I got enough crap going on. I don't want that hanging over my head. I don't know how you do it.
Having been in a position at one time where 2019 was a year that I again thought about quitting, because I had this was during the Ranger Proof era, at the end of the Ranger Proof era, when everything was coming down. I had a guy, he bought, I think, 6 different triggers from me at the time. He spent a bunch of money, bought a bunch of triggers, and he kept having issues where he couldn't get them to run. And I spent time on the phone with him, time via email. He sent me pictures. We video chatted. I don't know. Honestly, to this day, I don't know what was going on, but he ended up sending a bunch of them back, but he kept one. And it was in a factory frame. It was an Apex trigger that I had done work to. So Apex, in a factory frame, they're about as safe a trigger as you can get. Everything sits on the ledge with plenty of room. The safeties are the bulkiest safeties that there were. I mean, it was great. And what I did on my end was really just a basic over travel stop, a little bit of cut on the it was a pretty mild system. Well, right. He claimed it dropped out of his safe when he was moving guns around and shot a hole through his wall, or 2 of his walls, and this sort of thing. And at the time, I was already at the point with the Ranger Proof thing that I was like, oh my God, now I got a guy who's claiming that my trigger was unsafe, and he was throwing it all around all over the place. And my name was already at that point dirt from the Ranger Proof thing. And I'm like, what in the world's going on? So I can understand. Like it was one of the, and it turned out to be, he just called me a bunch of names, and it turned out he was friends of the group that was trying to get my name destroyed. So it was all bullcrap. But right. At the time, I'm like, what? I mean, I was really at that point about to close up shop, but I kept on going. And here I am, still building triggers for better or worse. But I can completely understand not wanting to do it for other people,
Right.
because there's if you don't do, tell people, you do your safety checks, check things out, but most people don't. They don't even
Right.
agree. They don't even lubricate. I mean, so many different things. I mean, I could talk about all of that stuff for hours, and normally I do on stream, but I don't want to waste your time. I know we've gone over the hour. What is it? Almost 6 o'clock. Almost 6 o'clock. I know you probably
You're good,
can't
man.
stay for too long. Okay. Yeah, lubricating triggers. That was another thing I learned the hard way. People, I had to lubricate the triggers before I sent them out, because if not, they would run into a scratch connector. You know what that does.
I
5 yard.
get that every once in a while on the customer service side of things.
Mm.
People will talk about triggers not resetting. In my first suggestion is lubrication.
Yep.
Put a couple of drops of oil right there. I send them a picture of where to apply it. And I would say almost every time I get an email back, that fixed it. We're all set. No more issues. And people just really take for granted lubrication in these systems.
For the longest time, there's a myth that Glocks didn't need lubricated, that they would run through anything. Now, maybe after about 100 rounds of some really dirty ammo and you get enough carbon in there, yeah. But until that point, they need lubricated just a little bit. Doesn't need to be much, but you definitely need some lubrication in there, because you get a scratch connector, your trigger brake will go from, call it 4 pounds to 10 or 15 pounds just with a little scratch. And you might get lucky and you can polish that thing out and the connector will be good. But I've seen it where on the other hand, once it's scratched, you're done.
Right.
I used to, in my very early systems, before I lubricated triggers, sending them out, I was running the Ghost Edge connectors in all of my systems. Well, what I would do is Ghost has a lifetime warranty, and I would basically just have them, have it send it to Ghost. You get a new connector. That's what happens. And they would do that. And then I started using other connectors, and I started lubricating them right out of the box, because people just drop it in there. They want to dry fire it, and then they scratch it, and it's my fault.
I'm pretty much only using like OEM 5-pound connectors now. I was doing a lot of the different 3.5s, and then early on, after talking with you, I got into the dot connectors. Yep. I ran those for almost a year, but I really got to the point where, with what I learned, the skills that I gained, I could work magic with that 5-pound connector, and you have that super short, crisp break. Yep. You get rid of that whole rolling. It's just where it's at now for me. I mean, it used to be all about the numbers, right? You see it in the groups, you see it online. How can I get that pull down as low as possible? I don't even know where my scale is anymore. It's around here somewhere. I don't use it. It's all in the finger. The number doesn't matter anymore.
Yes. And you're right. People will live and die by those numbers. That's actually why when I did the drop-in systems, I put numbers on my systems. I used to never do that, but to make it easier, and still to this day, I get questions, but is to help people understand, get an idea where it's going to break at. But the reality is, if you're living and dying by the numbers on a trigger break gauge, you might get a 2-pound trigger, but it's going to be long and drawn out, and just I tell people that want to bring a trigger gauge up to me and talk about it and that sort of thing. I say, I don't even really use them. And normally they've got that cheap one, the wheeler with the
bringing it.
Yeah, I hate those. They never.
What I have, it's around here somewhere.
They're good for rifles, but if you've got a trigger safety blade trigger, design, it's a hassle. You
They never
get a
rise
digital
in
one.
the same spot. You know, you have to
Never.
try and manually keep it in the same spot. It is kind of a pain.
Well, then what you'll have is you'll have people that hold the slide and try to grab it. And what does that do? Well, unless you've got a magazine with a snap cap in it, that's going to cause the slide to ride closer to the frame,
Right.
and it probably will give you an extra pound to half pound difference in your brake than if you weren't holding the slide because of cruciform engagement.
A lot of people take that for granted. You know, they just or they're not paying attention to, you know, where they're looking at their cruciform engagement. You know, they're saying, oh, without a magazine or around a snap cap in there, they're saying, oh, I've got, you know, 70% engagement. Well, put a loaded mag in there with a snap cap, and I guarantee you it's going to be a lot less than that.
And then when you go to reset, that's another thing is when you after the trigger breaks and you reset and you hold that trigger back right before the reset, you'll notice that
Drop down.
it's a different engagement, and you might have 70% when everything's at rest or when it's cocked, but you might only have 4% engagement after, you know, right before it's about to reset, and you could go binary. And you're like,
right,
you know, I've had people ask about that. So something that can be simple is not always that simple.
Unfortunately not. I mean, it's simple once you learn it and you figure it out, you make the mistakes, but you know, trying to explain that to people who are just trying to drop parts in and
Yes.
wondering why they're experiencing these issues, it's not always easy, you know, and you got to be careful from a customer service perspective.
Yep.
You know, I can't make people feel stupid, you know, for the parts that they choose or not understanding.
Correct.
Right.
And I try to be, I myself, even though I might sell triggers, and you know, I give people a little bit of hassle for buying a Tyrant or something like that. But at the end of the day, you know, a lot of times I'll help somebody figure out their issue without ever selling them a trigger. I had a guy who hit me up from the Dagger group the other night. He said, I bought a Fowler, not a Fowler, a skimmer trigger, and my gunsmith couldn't get it to not go binary. I'm like, one, you need a new gunsmith. And I sent him the cruciform engagement video. And I'm like, before you know, I'm all for selling you a trigger, but this will fix what you've got going on. And then if you're not happy, we can talk about buying another trigger. Well, he had already returned it by that point, but I'm all for selling somebody a trigger, but at the same time, I don't want to just sell them a trigger and then maybe they run into the same problem with mine, and now my name is dirt. When reality, if I can send them a video that fixes the trigger they already have, maybe on the next build they'll come to me.
Right.
Because really, in the end, yes, I'm here to make money, but I'm also part of helping the community. That's why I spend as much time as I do on the forums or the groups. And you know, I try to give out good information. And yeah, I haze people a little bit, but not too much. Give them a little bit of trouble. Just a little bit of trouble for buying
just a little bit
Tyrant.
on the Chinesium aim surplus triggers.
Yeah, I've been known to do that. But of course, those aim surplus triggers, you got a lot of people that are having trouble with their roll pins coming out of the safety.
Right.
Go figure.
Or was it the spring in the safety that was breaking? Was that it?
Some people were having the springs break. You run what? And I haven't bought one yet, and I need to. I want to see where they mount that spring at. One of the things people, when they build these triggers, they don't take a lot of that stuff into account. You throw a spring in there, the dingus works, and you're good to go. But depending on where that's mounted and what type of angle that spring is at, can cause issues. Where after so many times, and if that spring loses a little bit of compression, it will pop out of place and it's just gone.
Right.
I know an earlier version of the Steel City triggers, their safety spring was mounted. It was really neat the way it was mounted on a little bit of a stud on the safety itself, and then your standard pocket like in other triggers. But what would happen is during rapid fire at times, just because of where that was located and because it wasn't seated in a pocket, and even that stud, it would just, if you shot it fast enough and that spring, you would lose springs. And I ran into that. They've since redesigned it. But that's one of the reasons why I probably haven't done my own trigger, is because there's a lot of engineering that goes into a trigger that most people don't understand. And I mean, I've done videos on it. I've actually got a video I want to do again on trigger shoes to kind of go into more of the details that some people don't normally see, like the trigger pin hole. Having a good tight fit on that does make a difference,
right?
Instead of having one that wobbles.
Tolerance.
Yeah. So I can go, you know me, I can talk about this stuff almost every day and bore people to death with details on things that they'll never think about, and they'll still buy a $30 trigger, which I'm fine with. At the same time, if they need help, I'm here to help. And
James, why doesn't my $30 trigger work? Help me.
Yeah. Well, I had a guy talk about his Tyrant, how it was digging into his finger. That safety dingus was digging into his finger. I'm like, yeah, that overpowered trigger spring. I still love the marketing on that one. I'm like, yeah, that's your issue. Why don't we replace it? We'll get you something nicer. And then, the Johnny Glock triggers with the safety screw, or the pre-travel screw in the face.
Oh, yeah. I'll just crank that down and remove all the pre-travel. We'll be good.
Yeah. And I helped a guy the other day. I basically made one out here real quick I've got a box of those shoes. Gotta give him this. He's recycling, if you will. For $20, somebody can have and that buys him a new bar. But you got people, and I haven't looked at the instructions of what he gives for those, but I've seen a lot of people that have bought them and then they don't know how to install it and adjust that pre-travel. It's like, now I'm fixing his triggers.
I think he relies on the fact that he's not, or at least I don't think Johnny's modifying the actual safety tab itself. So
He's cutting it, and I see what he's doing, because I've built triggers around those. They just don't sell anymore because everybody wants an aluminum trigger shoe. I understand it, but he does cut them, but he cuts it to a point where even if you remove all of the travel to make it where the safety tab just works, you're still going to be sitting on the ledge,
right?
At least from pictures I've seen. So he's good there, but you're still allowing somebody to possibly crank that thing up and then just bypass all the safeties. But I'm sure he got on to me a lot about safety for a long time. So I'm sure he's aware of that, and I'm sure he's got some disclaimers, and I'm sure he's got good instructions. But again, people don't read instructions.
He used to have a lot better customer service like you do as well. You used to be able to message him and actually get a response from him. I think now it's his boy Wick, I think, is doing almost all the Instagram and answering all the questions. And he's got a team of people working for him now. I mean, he's so big, you lose that personal touch, Yeah.
It can be easy. You get a team of people and they're not invested in it as much as the original person. So that makes some sense. I haven't been to his website in quite a while. One of my things when I started out was people talk about my stuff being expensive, and me liking expensive things. I do like cheap stuff. I really do. I started out building triggers. I bought different expensive triggers, but my first trigger that I bought that was aftermarket was a Kinetatech trigger shoe. It was one of the cheap ones. And then I started buying more expensive ones. I saw that there was no difference, but I never bought one of his triggers. And as I started building triggers, I'm like, I don't want to be somebody who was looked at as stealing design. Like didn't want to do that. So I never bought one of his triggers. I've had a trigger or two of his in the shop, but they were his basic combat series, real basic. I've had to fix some safeties and other stuff, or tuned a couple up, but I've not had any of his high end stuff in the shop. I never wanted to be the guy that they said, "Oh, he copies Johnny's stuff," and it's like, no. We've talked. We used to talk more than we do now. And the whole Ranger proof thing through some. But like I said, I've always known him as the safety guy because he got onto me pretty bad about the Ranger proof stuff. Of course, who's building his triggers now?
Now he's all vexed.
Yeah. Hey, if you're vexed, put some gold bond on it.
There you go.
But,
it's not my favorite trigger shoe.
But I don't want to go down that road. Johnny's earned his spot. He's the original, and he doesn't have cool stickers like me. I'm just gonna say that. Never did the cool stickers. So I mean that was his loss.
I think he did patches, or he does patches. I don't know.
I think he did patches. Back in the day, I was gonna trade him stickers for stickers, but he never got back with me. So I don't know. And then, like I said, once I went full time and realized that my stickers were pretty lacking, I obviously had to up my game. And well, now I've got the best stickers out there, in my opinion.
I agree. I think you've done pretty well since going full time. I know you're killing it in the Dagger group for sure.
I gotta say the Dagger group has been very good to me. I'm very happy with the daggers. I'm happy with being able to with the drop-ins. I mean the Dagger is the reason why I came up with the drop-in systems. Before it was all the custom stuff, Leonidas, Excommunicado custom or competition system. Even my Polydat Pontoon was up there in price. So the Dagger was the thing that made me think, hey, the market's changing. You know enough that you can build a system for the right price, a very, very competitive price to these other drop-ins, but be better. And right. That was my whole goal. And the Dagger was the impetus to that. So I owe the Dagger a lot for right. keeping the Pontoon going, because the market for all of these different guns is different than it used to be. That's for sure.
Absolutely. It's come a long way though.
Still build some I'm not going to build you a Leonidas. You can build yourself a Leonidas. What am I talking about? You wouldn't even like it. It wouldn't be your
my boss. I was talking to my boss yesterday about things that I can't say when I'm talking to you. Yep. And he mentioned you and how he wanted to get his hands on one of your systems. I told him to reach out, see what you can do.
I can get him taken care of. I've got a lot of people, but I'll get him taken care of. Have him reach out to me. The guys at PSA, I've not dealt a lot with PSA customer service wise, except for I guess you. I've dealt a lot with you, but everything that I've ever gotten from PSA has done me well. I've got a couple of their ARs and whatnot. Obviously a Dagger, the Dagger slide really surprised me at how well done it is, how well built it is for the price it is. Because I've seen some cheap ones. I've seen cheap slides out there. They got it. So I'm good.
We don't have those rock slide issues.
Oh yeah, peeling back. Rails peeling off, like the pockets for the rails getting peeled back. I've seen the barrel hoods come apart. Their barrels, yeah. Like it looks like a tuna can that got opened up. It's bad. Don't really. They're still around. Rock slide is still around. I still see some, but it's not as bad as it was. They kind of came in at like. People were still building expensive stuff, but then they came in, and I would almost call that the downfall of your higher end builds. I started seeing more and more rock slides because people could buy them for cheap, and they were crap. So still crap.
Right.
So anything before we wrap up? I know you probably can't stay for too much longer, and my voice is starting to go. What do you got for us before we wrap it up?
What do I got for you?
What do you want to talk about before we go? Any special secrets or?
I don't have any real secrets to spill, but I'm really looking forward to everything Micro Dagger related we've got coming. I especially want to see what TacticalPontoon will be able to cook up, for the Micro Dagger. I think it's going to be a really great platform for people to customize and do different modifications to. Any Glock, like drop-in slimline trigger system should function just fine.
Okay.
So I'm excited. I think you can do some wonders for that platform, just like the compacts.
Now you guys aren't gonna do the hybrid trigger like Shadow Systems on the CR. Is it gonna be okay? That's fine. That's fine. because I urge you to learn from their mistake, because I've replaced a lot of them for people ever since I had one here, and I showed people how much better it could be. It's bad. So hopefully push and prod people, say, hey, don't make this mistake. Don't give them, I'll send the pieces. I've got the original trigger system. I will send it to you and give it to them and say, do not do this. Don't get me wrong. I would love to sell a bunch of triggers to people,
right?
But at the same time, don't let them do that to people.
I don't know for sure what the plans are, but without a doubt, there are patents that have to be worked around within those trigger systems. And I know Shadow Systems had to do the same. So I'm sure there will probably be some similarities, but time will tell how it actually plays out. But I think, or at least I would hope, based on how the actual trigger systems for the compact daggers turned out, I would hope they would try and go a similar route, with more of a minus connector style. Otherwise, it would be kind of, the contrast from, the rolling break minus connector on the compact daggers to, like a really firm, hard, heavy wall of a micro dagger, that would be really strange. At least try and have some consistency. But despite having a couple of them at SHOT Show, at least I didn't pay attention to if I dry fired them. Obviously,
one up. No, I'm just kidding. I'm bad about that at gun shops, but one of my local FFLs, before I was really in with them, they would be like, "What are you doing? Stop taking the guns. Stop taking these Glocks apart." I'm like, okay, they understand it now, but
we had some people. There's always people at those conventions try and take a slide off or do this. I had one couple, this really short, petite Asian lady and some other dude, and they were going to every single pistol on the display, and she would like lock the slide back, and I'm not going to do it, but she would literally point the pistol at her face, and she would like look down the barrel and was like inspecting, and she did this to every single pistol on display. And eventually I just said, do you need any help? Like, are you looking for something in particular? Turned out they were like forensics people. And the one thing they were looking for was the hole in the breech face where the firing pin protrudes. And like their justification was, for every new pistol that's coming out, they try and keep a log of the shape and the style of the firing pin, because they can quickly, differentiate. Like if they find a shell casing at a crime scene, they can say, well, this is like a Gen 3 style, or this is like a Gen 5 style. And I thought that was really interesting. It's not what I would have expected somebody to be at SHOT Show doing.
Did you tell her, if she just, instead of looking down the barrel, if you just look in the barrel hood, like in there? But hey, all right.
SHOT Show was an experience. Let me tell you, I've never been flagged so many times in my life. I think everybody, when they leave SHOT Show, like they need to like relearn proper gun safety when you leave a convention like that. Because if you went home and you tried to do some of the things people were doing at SHOT Show, I can't imagine the accidents that would happen. But
you got sick, didn't you?
I did. I didn't
Yeah.
get COVID, but I did come home with a little bit of a flu. It was probably just
Well, it's the SHOT Show flu.
yeah.
Everybody. I was supposed to talk to several different people after SHOT Show, and everybody got sick. And it's like it's a once a year thing. Maybe
Right.
next year I may be there next year. Less and as time goes on, I get less and less interested to be there. I've had some of my stuff out there in
Really?
different SHOT shows. Yeah. Nomad, one of the reasons their first SHOT Show that they had actual builds out there. I did most of the triggers. You can go back to some of the SHOT Show pictures from different magazines, and I had triggers. That's how myself and Nomad we got into contact with one another, was through triggers. So I've had a couple other triggers. Swamp Fox, in one of their SHOT Shows, I had some triggers out there. So some of my stuff has been out there, but myself, especially back when I was working full time, had a full time career, it just wasn't going to happen. So
it's insane. It's 10 times crazier than I expected, and I expected to go out there and spend all of my time walking around and wanting to see this and everything. And honestly, I got there a day early. I finished helping PSA set up the booth a little bit, and it just felt like my home. Like I'd wake up in the morning and I'd go down to the booth and I didn't leave.
Yeah.
It wasn't because I couldn't or I was told I had to stay there and work. They got me in the door and they didn't expect me to stick around, but I just enjoyed it. I wanted to engage with the customers and talk about our products, and I just had a lot of fun doing it. So I really didn't have the typical experience, as someone visiting SHOT Show, but I was still really glad that I went.
Okay, before we wrap up, I just remembered one thing. Glock performance trigger. Be careful. For anybody else as well, if you're taking one apart, and most people won't, but if you're taking one apart, and I ran into this, and I honestly don't, because I check stuff before I send it out, but I had one, and they're almost impossible. They're pretty much impossible unless you want to pay scalpers prices, and I already don't have hair, so I can't afford
like
scalpers prices.
$140 or something on
So I had one that I finished up and I sent out because I take them all the way apart. Well, behind the ejector, there is a pin that holds the a sear assembly cartridge in. Okay.
Right.
Well, that pin is drove into the plastic housing. That housing is specific to the Glock performance trigger, so you can't just replace it. It appears that one of the triggers that I reassembled, I'm going to say I did it. And I probably did. When I put that pin back in place, when I put it back into place, I must have not had it centered, and it appears to have cracked the housing when I went to drive it back in. Obviously, that housing is not something that's replaceable.
Right.
The customer elected to just return it, since I couldn't promise when I can get a replacement. What I would have ended up doing was just taking my test trigger and replacing the housing, but whatever. But be careful. If you're taking one of those apart, watch that pin. My recommendation, after learning this hard lesson, is to put a little bit of grease on the tip of that pin. That pin has a shoulder, and just put a little bit of grease on the tip of that pin so that when you're driving it back into the housing, because it is a tight fit, just put a little bit of grease. It should slide in, and then put the ejector on, and you're good.
I did have it apart a couple of times. So I know the pin you're talking about. I can't remember, was it directional or did
yes,
it not
it's
matter?
it is directional because it has a shoulder on
Gotcha.
it. So obviously, I guess what I did, and I'll take responsibility for it. because I have to. And I probably did. I had 4 or 5 of them in the shop, and I guess when I was assembling one of them, I cracked that housing. So I got pictures. He got it in hand, and there was a crack. It had come around, and the only thing I think of is when that pin was being installed, it cracked. So be careful if you take one of those apart, which you really don't need to. The biggest thing that you would really want to do with one of those, if a person was trying to fix one up for themselves, would be to the trigger bar. Trigger bar is kind of rough, but anyways, that's something I wanted to bring up while you were on while you were on screen and before we wwrapped up, because I was gonna do it before you came on to kind of give people an announcement, but I forgot.
But I was early.
You were. I was early, but not early enough. We'll just
that's good. It's been a few weeks since I had the performance trigger apart. The last one I didn't even pull fully apart. I just built with using the Dagger trigger shoe. Because again,
it is better than that one.
I still think it's great to see what can be done with that hinge trigger shoe that everybody hates, but
yeah,
maybe
I'll do a if I can get more of them in hand, because like I said, you can't, they're gone, and I knew that was going to happen. I'll do some more work, and I know we'll talk about you had some concerns about removing pre-travel. We'll talk about that probably offline.
Yeah.
Because I've looked at it, but at the same time, with everything I had going on, I hadn't got all the way. When I did my initial run of performance triggers, I did the over travel stop. I cleaned up the trigger bar. I cleaned up the brake. I reduced the weight of the trigger spring itself, the return spring. It's a little bit much. It's way better than Timney. I reduced that, and then I cleaned everything up. There's some burrs on the trigger bar and even on the carriage assembly. So
I don't think you'll have the same issues that I was getting at with regards to that performance trigger, because you won't remove as much pre-travel as I am, because you're removing a little bit to get that wall a lot closer. I'm shifting the whole action of the trigger much further back. And so, I'm removing essentially all of it, riding that very edge. And there's that little U-shaped piece that goes around the trigger bar. And you get to a point where you remove enough pre-travel and that U-shaped piece isn't doing anything anymore.
Yeah. And that's pretty much your wall. That's your safety. That's your drop ledge on the performance trigger. And as long as you stay within that, you're good. You go past that, then you got to start. And I'd have to look at it. I don't know.
Think there's enough room to extend the drop shelf or do anything like that on that trigger system.
Maybe on the inside. Yeah, that polymer is too thin over there. But maybe I've had to do this on other things. Go onto the other side and actually extend it, which is a nightmare in and of itself. But I have to look at it. It may not even be possible. So, all right. I have kept you long enough. I appreciate you coming on, Matt. We'll do it again, especially when the micro comes out. We'll
fingers crossed. I'll get my hands on some of those before they.
You've got a whole shelf full of them. I know it. You got probably 4 or 5 of them. You got the 10 millimeter micro that they're coming out with. Yeah. You got the 5.7 micro. You got the 5.7 Dagger. That everybody.
I do have the 5.7 Rock. You got to get your hands on one of those. That is a hell of a pistol.
I still love my 22 TCM. I'm just saying. That's my poor man's 5.7.
Yeah, but good luck finding ammo for that.
I have ammo for it. And here's how it works. Here's how it works. They produce it for about 2 or 3 months. And you have to find it during those 2 or 3 months. And then you wait for the next batch. And I found it. I found some in places I didn't even, most of it I bought online, but there were a couple little gun shops that I stopped in around the country that had some on the shelf. So of course I snatched it up. So I got a decent supply. I don't shoot it very often, but it's a crowd pleaser. It is a lot of fun. So,
all right.
Well, it was good having you here. We're going to wrap this thing up, and I'll catch you later, man. I'll catch everybody else later.
Yep.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Later.